Welcome to We're Gonna Run It with Joe Lisi and Terry Bowden. Coach, an unbelievable week of action. In week number one, we saw three major upsets in the top 25. I want to know your thoughts as we head into week number two. Could the dogs be barking?
Well, when your top teams play each other, whether it be Ohio State and Texas or Clemson, LSU, Miami, Notre Dame, the line isn't very big. Either team could win. They're basically toss-up games, even with the line. Uh, and so when somebody loses that you weren't expected to lose, they're not that far off of what you thought they were. And so I don't think we can make too much out of a loss to LSU. I mean to Clemson any more than a loss by Texas, other than the fact they've let one get by that they could have won, and now we got to go from there. So I think great games. I thought it was not a bad game this weekend. You know, people at Alabama would say that was a bad one, but I think for people that were just enjoying something different, it was kind of different to see Florida State in a different situation at Alabama on the other side too.
Yeah, complete 360 when we talk
Yeah,
about a 2-10 campaign. The only team that they had beaten last year outside their FCS win was Cal. That came right down to the wire. They blocked a
right.
field goal. You know, they were on life support in that matchup last year with Fernando Mendoza and Jaden Knott, and somehow, some way they pulled through. But the perception this year was that how good was Florida State going to be with Thomas Castellanos? They had a
Right.
7.5 win total. They were 13.5-point dogs. What was funny about that, looking back, and I had
Yeah.
told you that Alabama had won basically every week one matchup dating back to 2001. That was the lowest spread total that we had seen from just a side perspective, dating back to basically, I think it was 2010, 2011 when they faced
Right.
off against Frank Beamer and Virginia Tech. They laid around 10.5 points in that matchup. Just showed you how the books viewed Florida State from the spread perspective. Even
Yeah.
though they were 2-10 last year, the books thought that it would be a competitive game, and Thomas Castellanos was the X factor. So you have Florida State hitting on all cylinders. They're sky
Yeah.
high. They're putting out T-shirts already, ACC potential champions in the making. And on the flip side, Kalen DeBoer is just hoping, could we get a win and erase these press conferences? Because, Coach, he looks like a deer in the headlights in Tuscaloosa.
Well, I mean, it's just gone crazy. I mean, Alabama expected so much, and now it's a panic mode right there because they're not used to losing games like that. But I want to say this: there are those most say Tommy Castellanos was the X factor. Tommy Castellanos and Gus Malzahn is the X factor because when Mike, the head coach at Florida State, Norvell, and Mike Norvell hired him, he knew he had a great record against Alabama. He knew he had an offensive style that might cause problems to teams. And for Alabama not to know what he was going to run, I mean, he's 6-6 against. He's won 6 times against Alabama, even as an offensive coordinator at Arkansas or Auburn or a head coach at Auburn or UCF. Everybody knew what he did, and Alabama couldn't stop it. So, but it was a perfect melding or a mesh of an offensive coordinator that has called the plays successfully against Alabama for so long, and a quarterback, a dual threat quarterback that had a need to have he needed to excel. He needed to have something special happen. They worked out perfectly together. I was just shocked that Alabama's coaches, they've seen so much video. I said this, the book on Gus Malzahn is huge. And what I mean by that is everybody knows what he does. He's done it over and over again. And they should have had a better plan for it defensively, and they didn't, and it cost them dearly.
It did. And we talk about Thomas Castellanos, his
Yeah,
ability in the running game as well. 16 carries, 78 yards, the big touchdown to really instill life in the Seminoles and just allow them to sustain drives at critical points in that matchup. I'll say this about Alabama.
right.
The defense, once Nick left, they took a major step back. They allowed teams to run on them. They weren't as physical at the point of attack. I know that they're playing UL Monroe this week. And even though they're home, there's no guarantee that they're not going to come out flat and potentially struggle in covering this huge line. As
Yeah.
a coach, if you were in DeBoer's situation, what are you telling your kids? What do you want to concentrate on as they head into this week two matchup? Because it's not just ULM, right? It's to get ready for SEC competition in just a couple of weeks.
Well, he's got to be a great a calmer, a psychologist all right now, because so many players are hearing things in the classroom around town. The coaching staff's hearing how things are just going south. I've coached at 3 universities in Alabama. I know all about this, and I've coached against Alabama a lot of times. They are hitting the panic button there. So his job as a head coach is to calm the seas, is to calm this thing down and say, hold it, let's set back, let's do the little things. I think they know they almost absolutely should get a win against ULM, and it may not be as pretty, but they need to get the win, preferably a good win, because no matter what happens against ULM, it's not going to make up for what happened already.
Yeah, absolutely.
They got to win, and they need to win big, but nothing's going to help them get over that until they get back in the SEC. But he needs another game. He needs to calm them down and focus on doing the little things. He's been a successful head coach. I don't know that he's been a lot of places, but he's been very good where he's been. And now he's got to show what they hired him for. If he can't pull this together again, they hired the wrong guy. And right now, the biggest concern is they've played 4 underdogs in the last 2 years that were over double-digit underdogs and lost 4 in a row. 3 last year and 1 this year. And that's not Alabama. People are not afraid of Alabama down here, and that's not the way it's been for a long time under Nick Saban.
Yeah, and think about this too, Coach. I mean, successful at Fresno State, successful at Washington. Right. Those are different programs than Alabama. I don't care what you say. There's no bullseye on your back each and every Saturday coming out there in Bryant-Denny, right? Or going on the road when you're a nationally ranked power, number 8 in the country, and you're going on the road to Tallahassee and Florida State, and the world is thinking that you're going to beat them into the ground and win the game by 40, let alone lose it by 14, right? There's a huge difference in that type of mentality. And we always talk about players not being able to mentally be in the game. Well, I'll tell you what, that coaching staff, again, psychologically has to regroup, because to your point, it's not going to be this week that they feel good about themselves. A measuring stick will be if they play South Carolina in Williams-Brice, or they go into, let's say, a tough road environment in the conference and win it by double digits. Then you have your mojo back, right?
Well, yeah, and they'll have plenty of opportunity to do that. They're either gonna move back up toward where they feel like they were, or they're gonna sink, and they're gonna sink, and they've got either way to go. So they've got to keep it calm. He's got to keep the ship calm. Has got to make sure people stop believing themselves, that they pull together and continue to do the right things, because they have to regain what they have amazingly lost in 2 years since Nick Saban left. Because remember, when Nick Saban left, he didn't win the championship, but he was like a fumbled quarterback snap away from being in the championship again, even in the year he retired, if you remember. And so it was always at the top right there. So again, it'll be a big season for Alabama. They've got to continue to get back to where they were. Believe it or not, they can get back. They can get back. They haven't lost a conference game yet. But there's nothing we've seen so far in the first 2 years that suggests they've got a good plan for that.
Yeah, the other team that really has major question marks is Texas. I mean, again, I've labeled Texas like the Ferrari that looks great with the Pinto engine, right? Until they hit the curb and they break into 1,000 pieces. We've seen this story time and time again. It's one thing to get to the college football playoff. It's another thing to win a game, right? They struggled against Arizona State. They struggled against Ohio State last year, and they struggled running the football against the front seven that basically had a new coordinator in Matt Patricia. There were huge question marks more for Ohio State than there were Texas potentially, and Ohio State answered the bell while Steve Sarkisian and that defensive staff are still, searching for answers.
Well, and that's been the hit on Texas. They're more talented than most of the teams they play. So it's just go out there and play football, and you're going to win. And quite often you're going to win big, and you're going to win easily. Where they've fallen down is when they play people with equal talent. When they've got to run the ball, they've got to make themselves run it. They've got to make themselves be balanced, and they've got to recognize they have to find a way to win a four-quarter ball game. They did not score twice. Inside the 10-yard line, they did not score twice in that game against Ohio State. And you don't do that and beat good football teams. And again, statistically, I mean they had 323 maybe total yards of offense, and Ohio State almost barely had over 200. So from that standpoint, it looked as if they were doing the right things. But that goes back. Were they getting the running yardage? Were they getting the first downs inside the red zone? No, they weren't. And that's what you got to do to change this. What's going on at Texas of not winning that big football game.
Is Texas for real? Like legitimately, from what you saw, are they a top 10 team in your opinion? Like, would you put them in there? The college football player? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they lost to the number one team in the country, 14-7, and they have great talent. Now they've got to fix them. They've got to fix some things. Now Arch Manning needs to go ahead and relax now and become the quarterback that I think he can become down the road. I didn't think he would be there the first game, maybe not all of this year, but he's moving that direction. I just thought he had a very, very poor game in regard to just hitting open receivers,
right,
and making good soft throws with the underneath throws he had to make. He threw the ball real hard, back shoulder, made him difficult to catch if he didn't miss the guy completely. And he did not have the game that he needed to have. But I do think with his family and people supporting him, he'll get through it and get better and better. So yeah, I think Texas is still easily a top 10 team, but that don't mean you're a national championship team now. That might make you a college football playoff team. There's another level you go to get to that national championship level team, and we're yet to see that. We're going to have to continue to see the quarterback improvement and run the football.
Absolutely. And the Achilles heel in all the three games that we discussed, the two games with Ohio State, the Arizona State game where they won but didn't cover as a 12.5-point favorite. The rushing attack was inconsistent. They rushed for 1.7 against Arizona State, 2 yards per carry last year in the loss in the semifinal playoff game, and were completely shut down in this matchup last Saturday in Columbus. I will say the one team that, and you and I had talked about it, Georgia, right, and I understand it was Marshall, but I saw the old Georgia physical offensive line. They pounded the rock for over 200 yards. That defense got after it. I understand Charles Huff moved on to Southern Miss, so there was a new coaching change in right, that staff. But at the end of the day, that even though they didn't cover, they were right on the number. That Georgia performance for me said to me, you know what? My assessment early on was right. Georgia's going to be back in a big way, right, and Kirby is coaching them up.
You know, of all the coaches that coached for Nick Saban, would be Lane Kiffin or Steve Sarkisian, Kirby Smart's the most like Coach Saban. Defensive back, just like Coach Saban was, focused on defense, defensive coordinator, understands that he's going to build a team with defense, run the football, get your tight ends involved, have a steady leadership type of quarterback, and go from there. And I think that's what puts him. For Sarkisian, you always still got this Southern Cal background out there. Or Lane Kiffin, you got this not arrogant, but this macho, gonna go out there and outscore everybody. And that's the most important thing in the world. How bad can I make somebody else look when the football is being played on defense and run the football? And that's why I always, and I think you do too, drift back to Georgia when they do those things. The point is they want to do it. Quite often with Texas, it's not can they run, but will they run? You know, it's right, kind of like, and we're going to talk about that with Oklahoma and Michigan. I mean, will they run the ball? Will they give it to the back enough? Kind of like we saw Notre Dame and didn't give it to their running back. But you got to get, if you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back. If you want to throw an RPO, you got to run first, pass second. That's why it's not called a PRO. It's an RPO. You got to start with a running game that puts people on their heel. I mean, it makes them lean forward and come after you and gets after people.
Absolutely. And we talk about road environments, right?
Right.
Typical, the team that runs the football on the road wins the turnover battle. They're at least going to be in the ball game from the spread perspective, and more times than not will potentially strike the upset or get the road win, whether they be a favorite or a big underdog. The team that's more consistent in the rushing attack, especially in road environments, typically can at least sustain drives and keep a more explosive offense on the sidelines.
That's exactly right, and that begins with a balanced offense. And I've said this too. If I'm calling plays, which I did for a lot of years, and the defense is aligned with nine guys, maybe 10 close to the line of scrimmage, you got to start passing a little bit more than run to back them up. If they start backed up, you got to run a little bit more, but you can't abandon one and go to the other. You can't be all one thing, or you're going to be inconsistent. The defense is going to figure out what you're doing, and so you've got to stay balanced.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll be breaking down the Oklahoma and Michigan game a little bit later in the show. The other factor that I did want to bring up is LSU. From an offensive perspective, they weathered the storm. They found a way.
Right.
They were struggling early against a very good defense in Clemson. We talk about that dominance. From what you saw out of Garrett Nussmeier, the poise. I mean, not just Heisman frontrunner, because that's where he is right now, but just from a quarterback from year to year, have you seen him develop enough to where he potentially can lead LSU to an SEC championship and, more importantly, a national championship?
Oh yeah, man. Not only do you see his talent, his arm strength, his ability as an NFL quality quarterback, but you see the poise under pressure. The biggest thing I saw out of LSU that we didn't see out of Clemson was how good they played in the set. They got better every quarter, every series. They got better. By the second half, they dominated. I know in post-game press conference, Dabo made the comment, "Well, they might have got a C plus and we got a C minus type of game plan." And Brian Kelly says, "No," and he must not have watched the second half. We got an A in the second half. That's what they did. That's what Nussmeier did. He went out there and they got better and better. They stuck with their plan. Blake Baker on defensive coordinator got their defense making bigger play and bigger play. They stuck with their plan, mixed in the running game, and Nussmeier was the perfect quarterback. I just thought, he's kind of gotten the reputation as a Brett Favre type gunslinger. I think a lot of that was being forced to throw it in bad situations last year because they weren't just like Georgia. They weren't running the football well enough to be what they needed to be.
It was, and again, I think the biggest thing too is I never saw that team, even though they had the 3-game losing streak in week one. I never saw them really nervous. I never saw Nussmeier. I never saw the defense. Somebody was willing to step up and make a play like Harold Perkins, Whit Weeks on the defensive side of the ball. Their corners were playing man-to-man, lockdown coverage, weren't giving up chunk plays to Cade Klubnik. If that could continue, and they're going to be tested, make no joke, they're 37.5-point favorites over La Tech this weekend. That's not the concern. DJ Lagway in a couple of weeks in Florida comes into their house. That'll be a measuring stick, obviously, for them to potentially run or make a run at an SEC championship. So we'll see how this progresses. But early on, I think LSU can be there. Now, 9-1, I think is a little disrespectful, Coach, or 5-1 updated odds behind Texas. I understand Texas played Ohio State. I get that. Right. But still, I think the more impressive win, if we're looking at the Texas loss to Ohio State and the loss by Clemson, the more impressive win for me was LSU over Clemson because of how many question marks Ohio State had. New quarterback, 2 new running backs. You had a new defensive coordinator, 2 starters on the front 7. They overcame a lot and still dominated.
Yeah, and I think, as when I watched the game, and if you would have taken all the school colors off and not known one team from another, just make one team all white uniforms and one team all black uniform, LSU had the better athletes. They were more talented. When you watched them play, they just looked like a more athletic, a more talented, a stronger football team than Clemson. And that's something that is one of the most important factors. He who has the best player usually wins. And then you throw the quarterback in. So I think as we go down the line, and the odds may still be Clemson, LSU may be right there with Georgia at the top and Texas. Some people are putting Texas odds ahead of LSU. I didn't see quite enough of Texas to suggest to me that they put the best athletes out there and do the best things with them to give them a chance to be successful.
Absolutely. Let's dive into the week 2 slate because I'm amped up. At first look, I will say this, Coach. I didn't think it was that great of a slate, because of the top 25 battles that we had last week. The only
Right.
big one is Oklahoma and Michigan. But the
Right.
more I dove into these games this weekend, there's a lot of competitive games. They might not be from a national perspective,
Sure.
but just from a conference perspective and just from where these teams are, we could have some fireworks come Saturday. Let's dive right into the first one. It's Baylor and SMU. Baylor struggled with Jackson Arnold and Auburn last week. They were a 2.5-point underdog. They struggled, obviously, running the football. Their defense gave up a ton to Jackson Arnold on the ground, a $138 and a touchdown. When you look at this Baylor team, I understand they're going into a road environment. To your point, and we brought it up on the Bowden Blitz, SMU dominant over the past couple of years straight up at home, 15-1. Baylor, though, to me, still has the quarterback advantage. I believe in Sawyer Robertson more than Kevin Jennings, and that's why I think Baylor can win this game outright.
Yeah, I have too. I've got Baylor winning this outright, and I just think they're more talented, and I do like Sawyer Robertson. The quarterback, they're too good to be 0-2. I thought they played a very good Auburn. Auburn with
Jackson Arnold.
Jackson Arnold is a better football team, just like Florida State with Tommy Castellanos. Now, I don't think Jackson Arnold is playing as well as Tommy Castellanos, but it makes them a better football team, if for nothing more that when they told him to run, he ran, and he ran pretty dang good. I don't think Baylor was ready for that. But as I watch Baylor, they're a very good football team, very talented. And and SMU lost 9 starters on defense. They won a lot of close ball games, and even though they're very successful, 15-1 over the last 16 home games, I just think Baylor and Baylor's quarterback and have the better talented team or that have a better chance to score more points. And I just have to go with Baylor. I just think that's the team that's going to win. So I'm picking them to win that game. And I don't think that and this is, again, these aren't in the same conference. SMU will not have taken a conference loss, but I do think Baylor they just are too good to be 0-2. And
I agree with you.
And I think the quarterbacks, I think they'll be in contention for that Big 12 when it's all said and done.
And we saw Kevin Jennings struggle against Penn State, right?
Right.
A more physical defensive front. He did struggle with 3 critical interceptions. 2 got returned basically for touchdowns, and that put them at a huge disadvantage against Penn State. Why they got blown out 38-10 in that Week 1 matchup. But Sawyer Robertson, I mean, to light up an SEC defense like that, even though it's Auburn, right, for 400-plus yards, the kid has weapons, Coach. I mean, they have weapons that they exploited, and if they get into a rhythm, as much as I like Baylor, I think we could blow through this total. I think it's 63.5. I'll give you updated lines, but 63.5, I think we could blow through that number Saturday.
Yeah, I've got the over. I think even the SMU's going to score some points now. Baylor's just going to outscore them, and I think you've got Baylor minus 2.5 right now. I mean plus 2.5, but you've got an over 62.5, 63.5. I like both of those because I don't think either team's going to totally shut down when you got 2 quarterbacks that are above average. And Jennings is pretty good. Kevin Jennings is a pretty dang good quarterback. I think they're both going to score points, but Baylor's going to have a little bit of edge right there to get the win, even though it's at SMU in Dallas.
I agree with you. We'll see. That's a 12 o'clock kick, and I love the fact early kick, for SMU. I love those, stadiums. I go back to the day of Eric Dickerson, Craig James, when they played teams like Notre Dame before the death penalty. That's what you want to think about if you're an SMU backer, right? They're back. Their national prominence, again, ACC championship game. If Rhett Lashlee gets them back to an ACC championship, I mean, bigger and better jobs are waiting. I mean, he was an offensive coordinator at Auburn and some of the other schools big time, but could he be a head coach potentially in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where his next move is. I think he likes where he's doing, and they're putting money into their program. But when you make that one higher move, and now as Nick Saban showed when he left Michigan State to go to LSU and Alabama, even a great coach needs to be at a school that will give you what you need to win a championship. SMU does a lot of good things, but you're not going to attract the athletes that an Alabama, Georgia, Texas or LSU are going to have. So I could see him, and there are a few of the guys out there like him. And dang, that you pretty much are talking about a 7 to 10 million a year contract, pretty much in all those schools now, and that's a little better than you're getting at a lot of the other schools. Whether that's the factor or not, it has a little bit of weight.
Yeah, it does. Seven. I mean, you're 7 million. You're making X amount at SMU, or you're making 7, 8 million in the SEC. You'll take the pressure. Give me the paycheck. I'll take it
Yeah,
every day, right? And
yeah,
that's why. That's what you see. I mean, Hugh Freeze did it. Had a second stint, right? A
that's
big
right.
time coach. Went to Liberty. Had great success with Malik Willis. And look, now he's back in Auburn. And again, his back is against the wall. But that was a dynamic week one effort against Baylor.
Yeah, and I think we got to. I think coaches have to realize that, and I think they do. When you do take that kind of salary, then you better expect to be fired if you're not playing for a conference or national championship. Now your buyout will save you if that's what it is, but you don't get that money for nothing. Jimbo Fisher, who coached for me for 14 years, he goes to Texas A&M and things go south, and boom, they buy out the contract.
Right.
And you know what? In Alabama, don't think for a second if we talk 7 wins this year, maybe even 8, that they don't say, listen, we'll find the 60 or 70 million and we'll start over again.
Well, and before we're going to go to Oklahoma and Michigan
Yeah.
next. But aren't fans and fan bases now delusional about with the expansion of the 12-team playoff? And let me tell you what I mean. If you're Boston College, at the pinnacle of your great success, it was Matt Ryan and it was Doug Flutie, right?
Right.
Everything else is in between. At the pinnacle of the success for the last 40 years, your teams never competed for a national championship, right? Why now do fans believe that at Boston College, and I'm just throwing them as an example.
Sure, I know exactly
Why
what you're
do
talking
they
about.
think realistically that they could be 12-0 when basically we're looking at a 9-3 plateau for an elite program at the university or school?
I mean, everybody just wants to believe that there's magic. There's a magical guy out there that can pull the curtain from behind the curtain. It's just like UNC hiring Belichick, and that it's going to immediately mean they're going to play for a national championship. There are schools in America that I think I don't know if they'll ever play for a national championship because his history and tradition. It's all about, can you get the best athletes in the country to come to your school? We saw a verbal exchange between the head coach at Oregon and Oklahoma State about being able to buy a great team with NILs. You can come pretty close. Oregon's made that move. Ole Miss has come close. Miami. Those are several teams that are putting a lot of money there else. But I'm going to tell you, Miami's always been there. Oregon has not until the last 15 years. And Ole Miss has always been second level, not to get up there. But most teams, no matter what they do, they can pay all the money they want to for a coach, but he might as well have not because they're going to be 4th or 5th in the conference at their very best.
Right, and that's why we bring up Texas A&M at the heyday of Jackie Sherrill, R.C. Slocum. They were 10-2 and played Florida State in the Cotton Bowl back in the day with your dad, right? Yeah. I mean, that was the heyday of the days of Bucky Richardson, right? And just, Corey Pullick, and we could go through, Johnny Manziel. Yeah, great. He had the upset over Alabama, but his best bowl win was against Duke. So, I mean, when they hired Jimbo and they thought they were going to get over the hump, I mean, realistically, 8-9 wins was as high as you got. And that has been the history of Texas A&M football. I mean, even with the days of Leland McElroy, they never got to 12-0. Why now? Now, with the money that they have in that university, it's a different animal, right? Because Elko is supposed to elevate them. They got to 8 wins last year. Again, if he's in this area of 7 or 8 wins this year, he's going to face the same thing that Jimbo faced in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Texas A&M is the exception. There are teams that have every single thing you need. They felt Jimbo was going to be that guy. Didn't pan out quick enough, and and Elko now has a chance. But they are the wealthiest, I think, endowed school in the country with a football program. So they have the chance to move up. But you take all these other schools in the ACC or take the NC States, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Duke. How far, Virginia, how far can they go, even at their finest, And I'm just saying is you can't do that no matter what you do, because the best players in the country have been going to Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama and Georgia, and LSU, and of course Oklahoma trying to get back to that. And Texas
Right.
has had so much success that there are just schools that have the ability, from tradition, from money, from facilities. All those things are what it takes to build a national championship. And you got to have the right coach, because there were a lot of coaches between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban that didn't make it. And the right coach at the right school is always the best formula for being successful.
Absolutely. And one of those quarterbacks in the transfer portal was John Mateer, and Washington State's quarterback, right? Led them
Right.
to basically, a very good regular season record. Mateer counted for over 40 touchdowns through the air, on the ground last year, and then transfers to Oklahoma. They square off against Michigan. Bryce Underwood, the marquee freshman, came in, threw for over 200 yards. Michigan pounds the rock for 200 yards against New Mexico. Lackluster home win, 34-17. And on the flip side, Mateer started a little bit slow. This team struggled in the first half, pulled away. He throws for over 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I really think it's an uphill battle, and this spread opened up at 2.5. We've seen money come in on Oklahoma. I typically love betting the underdog. I can't find myself pulling the trigger on the Wolverines in this matchup, because I don't know what to expect from Bryce. And you got a veteran in Brett Venables going up against an inexperienced quarterback. He has Mateer. Give me Oklahoma, I believe, by double digits.
Yeah, but 5-5 is enough for me too. I think when you go to Norman, Oklahoma, and take a true freshman. Now, hey, I've coached in Norman twice. The first time I went to play West Virginia, I was a little old running back. They had a little boy named Billy, a little running back named Billy Sims, J.C. Watts at quarterback. Then they had Mayfield. The next time I went out there under Stoops, they had Mayfield. It's a tough, intimidating place to play when they get playing well. But I just think with that quarterback and the veteran quarterback that he is, and his offensive coordinator out there at Oklahoma, with Venables taking over the defense and his ability to put pressure on a quarterback. Now, I was at Clemson with him for 2 years. I was an analyst at Clemson, and I did crossover work for our defensive coordinator, who was Venables. He'll find a different way to attack a quarterback every single ball game. Whatever they did in the first game, they're not likely to have planned on doing that in this game. Both teams, you can consider whether they won big or small, may have been saving what they wanted to do in game 2. But if Michigan is smart, they've got a solid, outstanding defense. They've got to run the football, take the pressure off that quarterback, and don't make him throw when the defense knows he's going to throw. And I think they can do it. To me, the question for Oklahoma is, will they run enough? They like to throw at Washington State. The coordinator came from Washington State. Now, he did average 166 yards a game at Washington State, so he did get the running game in. But I felt like in this game, Oklahoma's got the veteran quarterback, but they need to make themselves run it some. Whereas Michigan's got the rookie quarterback. They have to run it some to make sure the pressure stays off of him. Only look at Arch Manning to see what a big stadium and a big away stadium can do to a quarterback, even if he's as poised and with a background as Arch Manning.
Yeah, so Mateer, to my point, accounted for 44 total touchdowns. He rushed for over 4.5 yards per carry, right? He had 15 rushing touchdowns on the ground. You look at last week's performance, 7 carries, 24 yards, and a tutty, 3.4 yards per rush. You got to believe that they held a little bit in check for this Michigan defense, right? You're not going to show everything in a dominating home win, especially when you know you potentially have a top 15, top 20 opponent coming to your house that wants to play defense, right? So do you expect Mateer and this offense to look a little bit different in their week 2 performance, or you think that, what we saw last week is what we can expect in this matchup?
I mean, I don't think you necessarily saw anything you're going to see this week in regard to personnel groupings, player formations, tempo, slow to fast, going back and forth. And again, I've been a head coach 28 years, and many years, if not half of them, I'd have a weak opening opponent and one I had to have game 2. And in the off season, I'm preparing for game 2 and planning on what I'm going to show game 1, knowing that I'm going to find a way to win that game, doing whatever I could. Now there are new coaches or first year head coaches and problems with a quarterback that's brand new like Michigan. I would imagine Michigan says, you know what? Let's don't make it complicated for that quarterback. Let's run the football, give him some not just one receiver routes, but 1 or 2 receiver routes where he doesn't have to scan the field for 1, 2, or 3, and make sure we put him in chance to be successful. Because if I saw Venables enough at Clemson, he gonna find a way to bring pressure on that quarterback in passing situations that quarterback will not have seen in any video. And if I am Michigan this off season, I did watch a good bit of Clemson video when Venables was their defensive coordinator.
We'll see. I like Oklahoma. I think we can get over this 44.5 now. It opened up at 46.5. It's down to 44.5. I think the perception is ball control for Michigan. Don't put the ball in Bryce Underwood's hands till maybe the second half if it's a 4-quarter type of game, and see if they could steal it. But if I'm a tier and I'm that offensive coordinator, right, Grubb, I want to open it up. I have the quarterback advantage. I'm playing at home. I potentially have the better defense, even though it might be slightly. I want to put pressure on that quarterback, Underwood. I don't want to keep him in the game. I want to run up tempo and try to make him play from behind in a deficit of 14, 17, nothing.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk like that. When I was a graduate assistant at Florida State, my dad called all the plays, and he would keep reminding me, Terry, the offensive coach's job is to score as many points as they can. Just don't make this too complicated. Go out there and score points, because if you score in one play, that's still 7 points. I don't care if that's 7 more than you would have had if you ran it 12 times and didn't do a thing with it or kicked a field goal. And so, I think if Oklahoma can use that veteran quarterback and can do some things and have some plays, some design, some schemes, and some personnel groupings, they need to get as many points as they can, keep the pressure on Michigan to make that quarterback make plays.
Absolutely. I know you're excited about this game. We're on different sides. You're chomping at the bit because you're believing in Austin Simmons and you're believing in Lane Kiffin. Now, last year, I will say, this line was 16.5, 17 points, Coach, right? In favor of Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin. They squared off against Vandergriff, the Georgia transfer. He goes on the road. They got them into this ugly game in Oxford. They stole it. Jackson Dart had an opportunity to tie it in the end, could not do it. That defense made a statement. It was the only win Mark Stoops basically had on his resume last year, limping to basically a 4-win season, but he had the notch in the belt. The last 4 meetings, Coach, have been decided by 2.5 points per game. Now, Zach Calzada, the former Texas A&M transfer, better throw for more than 85 yards or 89 yards like he did last week, because if he has that type of effort, Ole Miss is going to blow him out. I want the points with Kentucky. It's down now in New Jersey from 10.5 to 8.5. They're sucking you in, Coach. Are you still taking Ole Miss?
You know what? I get caught up. I've coached against Lane Kiffin. I've watched him score 10 or 15, 2 or 3 touchdowns in the second half of the fourth quarter just because he was upset and wanted to win by more. I know what he wants to do. And if he has a chance to do it, he will put as many points as he can on the end. Now, Mark Stoops, every now and then a team just lines up and has a great feel for an offense, and that's your argument there that Kentucky has shown the last few years that they line up well against this team. I like Austin Simmons. I like his history. I like where he comes from. I like the talent. The other thing is there's no pressure on him. There's no pressure on Ole Miss. They're not. Nobody's talking about him. Jackson Dart is gone. They're not preseason ranked as the most talented team in the country, but they're still very talented. And I think they will. I just think they're going to. I've got them beating the line and taking the game. As far as the over is concerned, when I say over, I think I'm over the 8.5. I don't know that I'm going to pick over because, again, I think even in a bad day they'll win by 8.5.
We'll see. We shall see if it happens, because I think the most shocking breakdown is if Kentucky covers and this game is over 51.5. right? Because then
Yeah.
that would mean that Kentucky is basically going toe-to-toe with the Ole Miss offense. And if that's the case, that would be shocking because they struggle with Toledo putting up
Right.
24 points. They rush for over 200. Now, I will say this. If that front seven, which didn't get tested last week by Ole Miss,
Right.
because they had the best rushing defense in all of the conference, giving up only 82 rushing yards per game last year. If all of a sudden we see Kentucky getting a push and they're ripping off 5-10 yard runs at home, then maybe this could be a track meet, because if Ole Miss's defense is the way it was a couple of years ago, basically a sieve, then Lane's going to have to outscore opponents to cover lines.
Yeah, I don't think so. I do think that they didn't forget how to do an NIL, and they had one of the best NIL recruiting 2 years ago for what they had on the field last year. I do believe they were able to do well this year to replenish their team, because Ole Miss is one of those schools in the country that with the money they're willing to commit to the NILs, they can replace people as good as anybody in the country, and I think they've done that.
Yeah, absolutely. And NIL does matter. We'll see if Austin Simmons is up to the task. A lot of people love Ole Miss as a dark horse to potentially challenge for an SEC championship, make their way to a college football playoff. We'll see how it plays out. Coaches on Ole Miss. I'm on Kentucky. It's right now in New Jersey, 8.5, right here on late in the week on Thursday night. Other matchup that I'm actually looking forward to, Coach, is this one.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt. This matchup last year went down to overtime. Kyron Drones got hurt in the overtime. He didn't play on the final drive. Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia stole it. I understand if you could ever be impressed in a loss, I think it was the Virginia Tech game against South Carolina. That was a physical defensive front, and they still put up 220 in the passing game. Kyron Drones got some yards on the ground. I know it's not going to be easy, but playing at home in Lane Stadium, I think Virginia Tech covers this line.
Yeah, I've got Virginia Tech. As I watched them play South Carolina, and South Carolina was one of my sleeper teams. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's up there on the top of the Heisman list. They sacked him, I want to say 4 times. They tackled him for a safety 1 time. The game was 10-8 in the fourth quarter. When Virginia Tech, when South Carolina returned a punt for a touchdown, then they threw a bomb, I think a 63-yard bomb after that to make it a bigger margin. But it was a tight ball game, and I guess I kept watching. I said, guys, this Virginia Tech team, they're as aggressive and as tough as South Carolina, and South Carolina can play. They ended up strong in the SEC, and this team got after it. And so I did like Virginia Tech, and after I watched them play, I said, I think they're going to beat Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt can't sneak up on anybody this year. Pavia can't sneak up. Now, they're a good football team, don't get me wrong, but I think there were a lot of people that nobody, when you play certain teams, and even when I was at Auburn, we kind of felt the same way about Vanderbilt. No matter what we saw on video, that is Vanderbilt. And that, right or wrong, that they were able to upset teams last year, including Alabama. I just think you don't sneak up on anybody. Virginia Tech is hungry. They did not have a great year last year. They played pretty dang well in that first game, but South Carolina was just too much for them to handle completely in that first game. So I like Virginia Tech, and I think they'll beat them in this game.
I agree with you. And I do believe it comes down to Kyron Drones. I think he could have a big day. One prop bet that I made, Coach, was 40-plus rushing yards. He got to 26. I think he utilizes his legs a little bit more. Again, knowing that your back is against the wall, he's a veteran quarterback.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter, he might take games over. So I think we could blow through this total as well. We see 47.5 across multiple books here in New Jersey. I'm over the 47.5, and I'm on Virginia Tech in this matchup. The other big one, and this one is a little tricky. I'll tell you why. It's a rematch. It's Arizona State and Mississippi State. You got Blake Shapen that comes back for his senior season. We saw this game last year. I believe, and I got to look at the spread, but I could be wrong. Arizona State at home last year, I feel like, was a 10.5 point home favorite. But they jumped out to a 30-0 first half lead, basically. Put the game on in Tempe, they were up 30-0. Now, they made some adjustments. Mississippi State made it slightly competitive. They were challenging. They scored some touchdowns in the second half. But I still am impressed with this front seven in Arizona State. Held Northern Arizona, I believe, last week to only 89 yards on the ground. 7 starters come back. The veteran Sam Levitt. I know now this is a tricky spot, as you know. Stark Vegas and those cowbells are going to be going off. I don't know if Arizona State can handle that, but I still think athletically they should be able to cover this number.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Arizona State preseason pick to really win the Big 12 conference. I just can't see a lot of ways that Mississippi State can muster enough to beat this football team or to even meet the line. I think what's 6.5 right now.
Yeah.
And I just got Sam Levitt at quarterback and the strength of their defense. I just don't see it. Mississippi State's going to build again. They're going to struggle again. They won a tight ball game with Southern Miss in the opening game, but they're just not projected to win that much in their conference or out of conference. So Arizona State, it is I've been there a bunch of times and coached in that stadium, and those cowbells will get to your head a little bit too, and because they're going to give you more cowbell, and they'll do it now, and you just got to get ready for it. But I do think Arizona State has a football team. The quarterback, the athletic ability, the people on their team, their expectation level that they'll go in there and they'll handle Mississippi State. Mississippi State got a good win last week. There won't be a whole lot of wins in this season for Mississippi State, and this isn't going to be one of them.
Yeah, Jeff Lebby came with a bunch of fanfare, right? You know,
Yeah.
he likes to run the football, comes with a high up-tempo type of offense. I'm not so certain that Blake Shapen fits that mold per se, came from Baylor, got hurt last year. But from what I can tell you, and this goes back over the past few seasons, is that when you look at Miss State, ineffective when they can't run the football. I mean, they are a one-dimensional football team. So if they can't run, and their offense is more of a finesse offense, right? He likes to run it with tempo, to almost like Tennessee, right? Where he wants to catch and gas that front seven. This front seven in Arizona State is legit. They can run sideline to sideline. They're going to have to make some plays on third down. But so if you're Lebby in this situation and you know you're an underdog and you lost to this team last year, athletically, maybe you're not up to par on Arizona State's level. What do you do to cover this line? Like, there has to be something outside maybe the norm that you could do from a head coaching perspective to potentially win this game.
Well, when you're the less talented team, there's not as much opportunity to go back during the week and put the trick plays in and the specials in and do a lot of different things. I think the biggest thing they can do is slow it down. Take the maximum amount of time off the clock between plays. Try to slow it down as much as possible. Get this game to the second half, because you get to the second half and Arizona State, if they don't have the game under control, now the emotion switches over to Mississippi State at home. Those cowbells don't stop ringing, and you got a little different situation. But the main thing you can do is slow it down, try not to turn the ball over, play good fundamental football, and make Arizona State drive the field to score. Don't give up those deep balls. And if that happens where they get a big play or an explosive play or two, they could take Mississippi State out of this game pretty early.
It is a measuring stick, right? To have a Big 12 opponent go into a lower tier SEC house, a very difficult environment, to your point, and lay a touchdown, right? So this is a measuring stick and a gauge for the Big 12 about where they stand. We talk about Arizona State at the start of the year had one of the better odds to potentially challenge again for a Big 12 title. We'll see if Sam Levitt and the crew could do it. The other one is the Battle of Iowa. Iowa State, 3.5-point home favorite in Ames, coach. Rocco Becht and that team are hitting on all cylinders. They're 2-0. They're stepping up. I mean, typically in this matchup, you always say lower scoring game, right? Take the points. And more times than not, it's Iowa smacking around Iowa State. But Iowa State has the quarterback advantage. They stole this game last year in Iowa City. They now go to a hornet's nest. And I'll tell you this, coach, as my background goes out here, but it's a hornet's nest, Ames, right? It is an absolute hornet's nest. This is not an easy game for the Hawkeyes. I'm going to lay it with Iowa State.
Well, I mean, if Iowa State wasn't playing so well now, I mean, Iowa, I mean, Coach Ferenc is the longest tenure, I believe, in the country. The amount of time he's been
Yeah.
there, it's always with running game, multiple tight ends. Play the defensive coordinator's been there almost the entire time. They always line up and find a way to do a great job to defend with their teams. But I don't think there's a better coach that people don't know about in the country than Matt Campbell. The guy does it. And Rocco Beck, he looks, he's like the head coach. He doesn't make mistakes. He manages the game. Uh, uh, Matt has few penalties. His teams aren't penalized. They don't make mistakes. Rocco fits right into that mentality. And said and done, they win close ball games. And this is going to be a close ball game. And I think the head coach, the way he plays, he's meticulous about taking care of small things. I coached against him when he was the head coach at Toledo. He was the same way back there before he got to Iowa State. Just Matt does a great job. Matt Campbell does a great job of making sure his team does not lose the game. They're going to do all the little things right. And after watching Iowa State play Kansas State, and I was real high on that Kansas State quarterback because of his athletic ability. I said, shoot, Rocco Beck runs the offense better. He manages his team better. He fits his head coach better. And I've got a lot more respect for Iowa State. I'm moving up towards. I don't know if they're the favorite in the conference, but I've got them right there at the top of the Big 12 right now.
Are they enough to be like Arizona State? And we looked at Arizona State last year, and we said, you know what, finesse team. It's Arizona State. They come out west. They were not built like that. They were built like almost like an SEC caliber team. They could run sideline to sideline. They had a battering ram for Cam Scatterboo, opportunistic in the back end. If they get this win, Iowa State, they're going to be 3-0. They're going to have an out-of-conference win against Iowa, a conference win against one of the best teams in the Big 12 in Kansas State, and their defense now would have stepped up in two critical marquee games. I mean, if they run the table, or let's say they're a 10-2, 11-1 football team, would you put them toe-to-toe with the likes of, I don't know, let's say Texas, Clemson, some of the others that maybe, 5, 6, in the college football playoffs, should they get there?
I mean, I don't think they're going to win those games. I don't think they'll be favored in those games. But the way they play and the way they're coached, they're going to be in more games than you can imagine. They're going to take games to the second half. And even if somebody else's talent overrides their good, solid, fundamental football, you're not going to feel like they don't belong. So, again, not only do I see them maybe competing for the conference championship, but I can see them in the college football playoff. I don't see them getting to the championship game. When you get to that level, not only is the coaching superior, but the talent level also is superior. And that's where you start to fall behind if you're doing it with just good, solid people and maybe not the best athletes on the field. But I could see them now competing for the Big 12 championship. I mean, and I can remember back when Iowa State, they couldn't buy a winning season 20 years ago. When I started coaching, that was one of those jobs you didn't want because it wasn't going to last very long. And Matt Campbell has just transformed that program, just like Bill Snyder did at Kansas State years ago.
He did. I mean, the heyday prior to Matt Campbell was basically Seneca Wallace.
Yeah.
Right, when Seneca Wallace, Seneca Wallace were probably another one of those underrated mobile quarterbacks. I go back to the quarterbacks and say, I look back and I say Seneca Wallace.
Oh yeah.
Remember Brad Smith from Missouri?
Oh,
right? Yeah. You go back to those guys and you look at the spread today and how quarterbacks are and you can't hit them. Those guys would rush for how many yards in today's game? We talked about Mike Vick and obviously Randall Cunningham being ahead of their time. I mean, Seneca Wallace, Brad Smith, I mean, all of those players were dynamic back in the day. They'd be putting up thousands of yards, both offensively in the rushing and passing attack.
Well, and it's what's funny back because I've been head coach since the 80s and the 90s. back then, the great quarterbacks in high school, they moved to a different position. Anquan Bolden for my dad, Deion
Yeah,
Sanders. So many of the quarterbacks that I had, the receivers that I had were great quarterbacks. Back then, we moved them immediately. They were now they were option quarterbacks who played a different position. Now
right.
your dual threat quarterbacks are tearing it up. Those guys that were there, those talents that you just mentioned, Seneca Wallace, they would have had a field day with the things that we're doing now in football.
Absolutely. Two other games that we'll touch. Now, you look at the big spread with Mike Gundy. He comes out, he talks about Oregon. You know, I love Mike Gundy, and he did more with, I want to say, less a
Yeah,
couple of years ago. You know, he's an alum. He took multiple pay cuts. He gets his team to a Big 12 championship a couple of years ago. He's lost them both to Baylor when he should have won that game. That
yeah.
was the game where Jalen Warren was hurt. But they lose to Dave Aranda in that game and then get smacked by Texas. They didn't win a conference game last year, Coach. They were 0-9 in the conference. You know, his win total is 5.5. He doesn't have a quarterback. His quarterback went down in the home
Right.
win last week. What do you owe? You're 28.5-point underdogs to Dan Lanning, a coach that got smacked around by Ohio State. You know he's going to be up and outs. And what are you trying to give him bulletin board material for?
Well, you know, and I've gone back because I was ready to write some articles on that comments that he made. I've gone back and he didn't word it right. He did. I don't think he meant it to be quite as much a hit. I think he was getting on his own people for not supporting his own program with the NIL money. It says
Right.
these guys with the NIL money, they ought to be playing people that give that kind of money because we don't give that kind of money. And I was going to get back and write, hey, Mike, you were the quarterback in the '80s at Oklahoma State twice. You had probation for giving people money. You know, they admitted it back then, but the fact was, he's struggling right now, and I think he's wanting to extend his career. He's not ready to hang it up, and somewhere along the line, you got to get it going again because it isn't going right now for him like it was in the past. And so he's got to find a way. And this is going to be a tough season for him because again, the fact that he said that was almost to me, now that I look back, that he's telling his own people, men, that I guess T Boone Pickens passed away, and he doesn't have that multi-million-dollar donor anymore like Phil Knight is at Oregon. And he says, "Man, people, we're not going to be competitive if we don't have NIL money that's big as these other people." And you know, that was always the thing at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma had all the players. Barry
Right.
Switzer and Bud Wilkinson and all the great coaches
Yeah.
over the years. Oklahoma
Jamel.
State
Yeah.
they had to do anything they could to get a Barry Sanders or to get a Thurman Munson, or get the great Thurman Thomas, get those type of players. They had to do whatever they could. And I guess, and he played there at that time. And so he knows that those people got to come up with NIL money. So I think Oklahoma State represents a team where they want to be good, or the coaches do. He's not quite there right now, and he's afraid NIL money is letting his career slip by because he can't keep up with the Joneses.
Absolutely. And I'll be the historian for the
Yeah.
great Oklahoma State players. You had Rusty Hilger, right? You had Mike Gundy, you had Thermal, obviously, you know, Barry Sanders, Hartley Dykes. But I'll kick it up when Les Miles was there prior to taking the LSU job. They had Vernon Morency. Remember him, number 33?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that kid could scoot. He went to the Green Bay Packers, coach, and basically, you know, never stacked on in the NFL. But those were the heydays back in Stillwater, and we'll see if they can get there. I mean, he's done a great job getting them to Big 12 championships, right? But the problem is that when he gets there, I mean, he was outmanned against Texas. They were
Right.
significant underdogs. But to not give the football to Ollie Gordon in the first half, I mean, he didn't give him the football once. And then you get outplayed by Blake Shapen in the Baylor game 5 years ago,
Yeah.
when they, you know, that's where I scratch my head. Now, I'm so crazy that when I look at this game, yeah, I know Dante Moore and Oregon are good, but give me the 28.5 without Oklahoma. I mean, it's now down to 27.5. I know he's got no quarterback.
Yeah.
I know, but they got to find a way to cover this line, no?
Well, you know, and the thing about it is, coaches coaches aren't paying attention to that line. That's that. He says, I'm either going to, like my dad would always say, he would always say, Terry, if I'm going to lose, I just soon lose by 50. If I'm going to lose by 5, I'm going to go out there and lay it out there and do what I can. Now, if he wants to keep it close and have a chance to keep it close, he'll just slow it down. Make sure you run that football. Try to keep all the offensive players for Oregon, keep them underneath you. Play cushion, play zone, and keep it underneath you. But again, when you want to win and you're competitive as Gundy is, you may go after him. You may go out there and get after it and try to make something happen at the expense of possibly giving up the big points, giving up all that. But anytime I see Oklahoma State that far many points, I got a hard time not biting on that one now.
It is, especially with the play with the clock, right?
Yeah.
When you don't stop the clock after first downs, all it takes is one drive to basically erode 8 or 9 minutes, right? So for a team that's a significant favorite, like 4 touchdowns, you better be hitting chunk plays every drive. Otherwise, you're looking at the game. It's like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You're only up by 17.
Well, I dealt with that because that rule changed on me as I'm coaching on the sideline.
I hate that rule. I'm
wondering where the game. I don't know why we did it. We're doing so much to make the game so faster so we can make the commercials longer. I had the luxury of being a head coach in college for 28 years, but also a network television studio at ABC in New York for 10 years. I know how long they've got slots, 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
We want that game in about 3 hours and 8 minutes or whatever. And so they want to get the game cut short so they can add more commercials. And we know what's going on. I just think it wasn't good for the game. But now that you mentioned timeouts and using the clock, I have to make a comment. Colorado against Georgia Tech should have called timeouts in that last minute and 9 seconds.
And
they need 7 points. And I hated to say it because I'm a big Deion fan. He should have used his timeouts from the get-go. I mean, why now he threw a swing pass on first down? That was the primary receiver. The swing pass should be the last guy you throw to as he's running out of bounds because it's only 1 minute left and you got to have 7. And when you get nothing, you got to call timeout or clock play.
Right.
I just was disappointed that you took 2 timeouts to the dressing room after the game and didn't say, you know what, I made a mistake, because it was a mistake.
Yeah, it was. And I'll tell you another mistake with quarterbacks, 4th and, let's say, 15. Kid's looking because he doesn't want to throw the interception. Throw the ball on a 4th and, I don't care because something good could happen. Pass interference, the kid could catch it. You can't eat a sack. They should practice that every week that there's game day. 4th and 15, situational football. You rush the quarterback. What is he? If he's eating the ball every 4th down, I get his ass out of there and put it in the backup. I mean, because at the end of the day, the quarterback has to have his head in the game. Salter didn't, coach, right? And that's why it fell on Deion. If Salter was in the game mentally, he would know I have 2 timeouts, incomplete pass, or a ball gets caught in bounds. We didn't get the timeout. We didn't get the first down, timeout, right? Then and there.
That should go on Thursday in practice. That should all be gone over because the only 2 people can call timeouts in a college game. The only guy on the sideline is the head coach. No assistant can call it. No player on the sideline call it. The head coach only. That's why you got to move around and stay close to that official so you're by his side. Now, if you're coached up during the week, you've got a player on the field that can call it. Your quarterback or a linebacker, they're allowed to call it on the field. And a lot of people would have the quarterback looking right at the head coach. And every play, look at the head coach. If he says timeout, timeout. If he says clock play, then dead ball that way. We'll save the timeout.
Right.
Or if he goes timeout, you got 3 choices: clock play, timeout, or go run it. And so that was just not a good plan because I mean I kept thinking they got a minute left, and I'll say this. The pros are much better at 1 minute offense or whether you still call it 2 minute offense. Colleges, I think ever since we went to hurry up tempo offense, we think that makes us good at the last 2 minutes of a game. It doesn't because the clock is added and that changes everything, having timeouts or not having timeouts.
Absolutely. So we'll see. I'm on the points with Oklahoma State. I think, and I'll say this from I'm a big uniform guy. I hope they break out the orange pants, white jersey, orange pant, black helmet on the road in Eugene against Dan Lanning. Another game, and I'm crazy, call me nuts, that I'm going to go on because they looked absolutely pathetic in their week 1 battle. I picked Utah. You picked Utah. We both thought Utah was more physical offensively and defensively against UCLA. They got smashed. Now they go on the road to UNLV. Dan Mullen's there, 2-0 as head coach. I'm crazy enough, coach. I'm going to lay the 2.5. I know last week was a bad loss, but we always talk about complete 360s happening from week 1 to week 2. I'm going to lay it with UCLA on the road.
Yeah, well, they've got to make some improvement, that's for sure. And if they can do the things they need to do, you'll get that. But it wasn't. I mean, Iamaleava did not have the game they expected him to have. In fact, I'm pretty sure in my mind, having watched those teams play, those quarterbacks play, I coached against the App State quarterback who's now at Tennessee. He played against me when I was at ULM, and I studied a lot of Iamaleava. And I think Tennessee got the better deal. UCLA, I think Iamaleava is not as accurate as he needs to be, and he's going to play a lot better.
Here's the thing, too, Coach. Are you shy? I told you the spread is 2.5. You got to now. UCLA is not a typical Big Ten team, right? They're still that Pac-10, Pac-12 finesse type of team. We know how good Utah is at home. UNLV is at home. Excuse me. Are you shocked that there's 2.5-point road favorites? Now I know UNLV did not show well week 1, but that's a new scheme with Dan Mullen, right? They worked out the kinks in week 2. I mean, are you shocked that it's not like that? We're still giving UCLA a 2.5-point road favorite type of situation?
You know, to me, it's still based on what we typically think of UCLA doing in the quarterback situation instead of the way it is right now. So that's going to be a tough place for them. The way they're playing, that's going to be a tough game for them to go in there and win with points or without points. And so, again, but every now and then I get one of those say, why in the world, except the fact that that's UCLA and that's UNLV.
Right. Here's UNLV, and we talk about Dan Mullen, great offensive mind, never been known for defense. Certainly not Barry Odom. They're giving up 152 rushing yards per game. If I'm Deshaun Foster and I'm that offense, I don't even want to put it into the quarterback's hands. Run it every shot you get. They're giving up 5 yards per rush, coach. Yeah, UCLA should be able to manhandle or at least control the line of scrimmage. I don't care if it's a shootout. You still should win this game by a field goal.
Yeah, the whole deal is, again, it's not so much can they run, but will they run? There's so many people mentally, so many schools, the mentality is to throw the football. We think of a lot of West Coast stuff, whereas on the East Coast or the Big Ten or the SEC, run the damn ball, run the damn ball. You know, that's kind of what the philosophy is. And so it's hard to change what somebody is. And that's why it worries me a little bit about Oklahoma getting that Washington State mentality on the offense.
Right.
Don't be afraid to run it. And of course, UCLA, they're smart. They'll run that football.
Yeah, last game, 20.5-point spread. BYU at home. Kalani Sitake, BYU step up. Bach Myers, the new quarterback. Stanford got the road loss to Hawaii. Could Frank Reich do anything to cover this line? 20. They were completely outmanned. I mean, they did not look like an ACC caliber team defensively against Hawaii. And we know BYU is blue collar.
Yeah, BYU. In fact, I don't know that they have to score a whole lot of points to still make that spread because they're going to hold Stanford to nothing. So, yeah, I think the point spread is very comfortable for me. BYU is going to get. I think they're going to win by what they want to, but it won't have to be too much because I don't think Stanford has a chance to score very much to what we saw against Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, I might take a shot on the over just because I believe BYU can run it. Well, here's the other thing, and before the fact that they're 2 years older matters a lot in this matchup, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they go on missions. They're more mature, 22, 23 years of age. You have a new scheme, new head coach. They were competitive, but I still think that's where BYU should be able to wear them down. I'd be inclined just from the spread perspective to potentially take the 20.5 with Stanford, hoping, but I think my better play would be the over in the matchup.
Yeah, and I would still take BYU. I still believe the numbers are not going to be that Stanford cannot keep up close. That BYU can pick their score, and because I don't think Stanford's going to be able to score It doesn't have to be a whole lot. It can be
Yeah.
31-3. It can be one of those type scores.
Yeah, great slate of action for week 2. Coach and I are going to be on Twitter. You can hit me up at Go for the Two. Hit Coach up at Bowden Blitz. We'll be getting more and more involved as the weeks progress. We're putting out the podcast. We're going to run it bi-weekly. Right now it's been on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'll see as we get more acclimated if we can get 3 days a week. But that's been the schedule, Coach. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week with We're Gonna Run It.